Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description.
Okay. Hello everybody, today, a car. Hi everybody and welcome to JayEmm on Cars. Today I'm driving this. Hi everybody, do you like your new cars old? Then this could be the one for you. Oi. Volvo. Hello one and all and welcome to JayEmm on Cars. No wait, that's not mine. Tonight, a saucy Scandinavian. No wait. Hi guys, it's me. No, that's not mine either. That is my confused face, bro. Hello everybody. In theory, I have the simplest job in the world. Drive a car and then tell you whether I like it or I don't like it. But I've been living with the Volvo XC60 for a week now, and I cannot work out whether I love it or I hate it. This car has me as confused as a dude disguised as a dude playing another dude. But given the fact it's going back to them tomorrow, I really need to make my mind up. And so hopefully by the end of this video, I will have. Enjoy. Now when it comes to Volvos, I'm more in the camp of respecting them rather than loving them. And I think it's only really the C30 and possibly 850R that I'd actually want to own for myself. Of the modern range, the XC40 I consider to be one of the worst cars I've ever experienced, though sadly never had the chance to film. The XC90, meanwhile, provides an interesting Scandinavian alternative to the likes of a Range Rover Sport, and the EX30 was great on paper, but ultimately a bitter disappointment. So all in then, bit of a mixed bag. But when Volvo got in touch and offered me the chance to drive the new XC60, I was very excited for two reasons. First off, though I've never driven one, it is a car that to me has always made an awful lot of sense, being usefully larger than the XC40, a bit more upmarket as well, but not quite as big as the XC90. And I wasn't aware there was a new one. So I said yes straight away. And here we are. It turns out though that their idea of new and mine are quite different. What is actually changed for the 2025 car? Well, there's a new design for the grille and the infotainment has been upgraded. Otherwise, this is more or less the exact same car that's been on sale since 2017. Although that's not entirely a bad thing. First off, it might be a 9-year-old car now, but to my eyes, it still looks good, lacking some of the over-styling elements that are now so prevalent in modern-day cars. This is pure, understated Scandinavian elegance. It's also sized quite nicely, at 4.7 metres long and 1.9 metres wide, excluding the mirrors. This makes it marginally smaller than a BMW X3. The width means that on certain country roads it can be a little bit daunting, but on account of it being relatively short, it's not a problem in the vast majority of UK parking spaces, provided you can get out. The trim levels are also somewhat confusing. First off, you have to choose the car in either regular guise or black edition, which at first glance appears to be very poor value for money, with the regular car starting at just under £50,000 and the black edition at almost £57,000. And the only apparent difference, black paint, black accents, which you can choose anywhere on the regular model, and bespoke wheels. The truth is though, it's more like a £1,000 difference because you cannot get the black edition with the basic core trim. Instead, that comes only with the Plus Pro or Ultra trim levels. And to make matters worse, the car is then available as either a mild or plug-in hybrid. Should you go with the mild, you get a 250 horsepower, 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, which is the same across all of the trim levels and labelled as the B5. Go for plug-in with either the Core, Plus or Plus Pro trims and you will get that same engine joined by a more significant amount of electrical assistance and a larger 14.7 kilowatt hour battery for a total power output of 335 horsepower, or go for the Ultra trim, and that T6 badged engine is then replaced by a T8 badged variant, making 406 horsepower. To make things even worse, Volvo themselves can't seem to make their mind up as to exactly how much power each element of this car makes, because although in the literature that they gave me and on their website they agree about the total power output, 335 horsepower here for the T6, they disagree on the split of how that power is generated. Both of them claim around 150 horsepower for the electric side, but online they say 180 horsepower for the petrol engine, but in the brochure they gave me, they say it's 250. Quite a big difference. And having driven it now, I'm more inclined to believe that one. Not just because it's the same figure as you get with the engine in the mild hybrid variant, but also because the way this thing goes, that ain't no 180 horsepower engine. It also took me forever to work out what is the difference between the T6 variant and the T8, because on paper, though they make different power, it wasn't particularly clear how. It turns out, though, the difference is quite significant, for in the T8 badged variant, you get the twin-charged engine, with both turbo and supercharging, as you'd seen in things like the old V60 Polestar and Polestar Engineered. If you were to go with that top-of-the-line T8, you'd spend around £72,000. The car we have here is, I think, very representative of what the average buyer is likely to choose. So it's the T6 plug-in hybrid in plus trim level. This is £62,000. The only option on here, the metallic paint, a colour that Volvo's engineers described as having been come up with by one of their particularly crazy engineers after a very long night out experimenting with various different hallucinogens. This is Volvo going truly off the rails. But even here, a couple of rungs from that top-end Ultra, the specification level is very generous indeed. You have integrated Google Automotive, giving you access to apps like Google Maps, Spotify, BBC Sounds, so on and so forth, to which you can then add Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, though sadly both wireless. You have heated seats both front and rear, multi-way electric adjustment and memory in the front, 2-zone climate control. You've also got 360-degree view cameras, which, having just come out of a Porsche Taycan that cost twice as much as this and didn't have them, is very nice, and it works very, very well. You've got a wireless phone charger, all of the modern-day ADAS stuff, plus your typical Volvo things like a pre-restraint system for the seatbelts if it thinks you're about to have an accident. Naturally, safety is still very much a focus for the company, although I would say today, with increasing regulations, that's not the USP it once was. Still, there's lots more to like about the car, such as the interior. Now, it may be showing its age in some ways. These controls over here have been used since the dawn of time, but it means there are still physical controls on the steering wheel, even if the digital display here doesn't really do all that much. There is an odd smattering of more physical controls down here for your stereo, though sadly all HVAC related functionality is run off of the big screen up here. Still, the engine start-stop is physical. You have an auto hold here for the 8-speed gearbox. You've got plenty of storage throughout, and I like the materials. This stuff is called Nordico, and it's an artificial leather. It's good, but not great. Feels a little odd sometimes. However, the seats themselves are excellent. A typical Volvo highlight. There's a Harman Kardon stereo with a million different settings, none of them particularly brilliant, but still, it's a name people will recognise and makes the thing feel like a nice upmarket car. The headlining material I'm a little less fond of, though I love this reclaimed driftwood they've used for the interior, which gives it both a nice look and a pleasing texture too. The display in the centre here is nice, clear, high resolution and very easy to read. There's also a good amount of space in here. You've got plenty for passengers in the back, and the boot is an okay, if not spectacular size. All round, it's a very appealing package. The overall ambience of the interior is certainly more warm and welcoming than the likes of a Porsche Macan, with more soft touch surfaces and pleasing shapes, but it's not quite as opulent as, say, a Range Rover. And on the spec sheet, there's more good news too. because unlike a great many plug-in hybrids I've experienced, they still found room in here for a proper sized fuel tank, 71 litres. That then combines with an apparent electric only range of up to 50 miles, giving you a theoretical range of well over 600 miles. And that's not the only good news either. Peak torque here is a claimed 589 newton meters. That's 434 pounds-feet, which in a car that weighs 2.2 tons is much more important than the peak power figure. And it's good enough to get this from 0 to 62 in 5.7 seconds and on to a limited top speed of 112 miles per hour. Though I do find the claimed fuel economy figure of 313.9 mpg to be a little hard to believe. And that is where things start to go wrong. But to explain the problem, we've got to get this car from the spec sheet into the real world. There is unfortunately no sugarcoating it, but this car has a serious problem. See, when this car was dropped off on my driveway last week, it was proudly showing a full tank of fuel with 500 miles of petrol range and 30 miles of electric. Yeah, sure, we know they claim up to 50 on electric alone, but that's in an urban environment. 30 to me seemed perfectly reasonable for this kind of car. And I know what you're thinking. Well, James, the logic with cars like this is you have that electric range for when you want to go into a city or to get off the driveway quietly in the morning, and then of course you've got the petrol engine for your nice big long journeys. But this, like many plug-in hybrids I've driven, just doesn't work. Why is that? Well, very simple. You drive this car in its hybrid mode. You can also choose power, which will then give you the petrol engine all the time. Pure, which is simply electric drive. There's then off-road for low-speed maneuvering, and all-wheel drive, in which the car will keep both the petrol engine turning the front wheels and the electric motor turning the back going simultaneously. Happily, there is also a setting here where you can tell the car to actively charge its battery. This is something that's been lacking in other Volvos I've driven, and I'm happy to see it here. But the problem is a very simple one. You see, you drive it in, let's say, hybrid mode, which is the default, and for the first, say, hour or two of driving, maybe 80 to 100 miles, it'll appear very good indeed. In fact, when I first got the car, after about 45 minutes of countryside driving, it was proudly showing me 580 miles of range. Excellent. It was doing an average of about 80 to the gallon, which is superb, and sure, nowhere near as good as the 300 plus claimed, but also that's a figure I think everybody knows not to expect. How do they come up with such figures? Well, it's quite simple. In some of the tests, you are allowed to start with a full battery and end with an empty one. That's not right, is it? But still, 80 mpg, nobody is going to sniff at. The problem is that after you've done that first, say, 100 miles or so, well, the car will have totally depleted its electric power. And then it leaves all of the heavy lifting simply to the combustion engine, which now has to drag not just an SUV, but also all of its hybrid gubbins along as well. This means that even driven gently, it won't do 80 mpg. In fact, it'll do just about 35 if you're lucky. Oh wow, look at this. These things are seriously rare now. A champagne-coloured Rover 45. I salute you, sir. An O2 plate as well. Might even be a pre-project drive car, that. Oh yes, that's the British car geek in me coming out. I then decided to see what would happen if you put the car into its charge mode. Of course, this being a plug-in, the ideal way to get electricity into it is to plug it in when you're at home. And you can do this with either a granny charger or a regular 7 kilowatt AC charger. The car will take up to 6.4 kilowatt of charge, meaning with your average home charger, you should be able to fill the battery in about 3 hours. Even plugged into a slow charger overnight, you will fill the thing. But if you press the charge button here, as I did yesterday, you'll find the car won't do 313 mpg, it won't do 80, it won't even do 30. It'll do about 24. Now, I can already hear them crying, "James, you're doing it wrong. The whole point of this is, like you yourself said earlier, you use the electric bit for your small, easy daily commute. Then, when you want to drive to Scotland, that's what the petrol engine is for." Okay, sure, I kind of get that. But here is, and has always been, my counter to this kind of setup. If the vast majority of your journeys are simple, nice, easy, A to B of, say, a few miles, why don't you buy a full electric car? Even one with a short range is going to be more than adequate. And the fact is, not many people actually do that big theoretical 400 or 500 mile journey all that regularly. For those that do, this then is highly compromised, because what you're doing is then driving along with a car that's not doing spectacular MPG. I'd much rather just have a nice big diesel engine. The figures you get in this I have seen from V8 diesel Range Rovers, and they'll do that figure all the time. But let's just pretend you are somebody for whom that isn't a problem. You don't mind about the fact this is, in concept, a thoroughly stupid thing to have. You've decided that for you, you can make it work. You're happy to plug the thing in every single blooming day, which you have to do even if you're doing short journeys, whereas if you bought a full EV, you'd only have to do maybe once every fortnight. And of course, you've still got to go to the petrol station. Now let's decide you're okay with that. Well, it gets worse, because with this car you've got a not even but close to it split of how the power is delivered. So 150 horsepower from the electric motor and 250 from the petrol engine. Now add those together, of course, and you'll get 400 horsepower. Instead, they claim here 335 because of the way the two systems integrate. And when you get in the car, particularly with a full charge, it's very impressive. The response from that electric motor, which itself has over 300 newton meters of torque, is very good. It means the thing feels surprisingly responsive. And bury your foot, you'll wake up that petrol engine, and the shove it delivers is quite surprising. Now, I've spent the last week in a near 800 horsepower Porsche Taycan, and that's the kind of car that ruins just about everything. Even so, this has still impressed me in that regard. But again, there are problems. See, that petrol engine, well, it takes a little while for it to kick in. When you put your foot down, there is at least a second or two where you can feel it start and then feed in the power. This means if you're driving in hybrid mode and you want to go for a quick overtake, sometimes you'll miss the gap. Whack it into power mode with the combustion engine running all the time, and you solve a little bit of the problem, but then you find every time you put your foot down, it wants to change a bunch of gears. So you go, okay, all right, I'll put it into manual mode then. And you find out the gearbox isn't brilliant. It's okay, but the thing is geared quite short, and without the electric battery being fully charged up, you realise your turn of pace isn't what it was 24 hours ago. The suspension too is a very confusing affair. Now, you can option this car with air ride, which I suspect would be a good shout, because here it's frustrating. At low speeds, it's just too firm. Get a move on then, and it starts to work quite well. It feels like that bit of the car has been engineered by people that kind of like driving. This car, with some Öhlins dampers and a proper T6 six-cylinder turbo, would be mega.
Insultingly, the American market almost gets that car, with the T8 Polestar engineered. That features a 455 horsepower variant of the twin-charged T8 engine as we get here, and they pair it with those magical Öhlins dampers. That's a seriously cool car. Why don't we get it? Damn you, Volvo.
As it is, because of that powertrain, the whole thing just feels like a massive compromise. And I wish I could then say, well, other than that, it's actually a very, very good car. But it's not. The bad news continues. There are two settings for the steering wheel, soft and firm, and neither of them are particularly good. But in a car like this, I can almost forgive that. You can turn off the lane keep reasonably easily, but not the traffic sign assist. There's a way to temporarily disable it, but it keeps coming back, and most frustratingly, on the exit of my village, the national speed limit sign has been covered up by a hedge. And so, for the first 5 miles of my journey every day, the car thinks I'm speeding when I'm not. And what's most frustrating is that here you have the bones of a car which is fundamentally quite good. It's sized nicely, it's styled very well, give it a proper engine, and you'd have an awful lot here to like. As it is though, I really struggle to think of anybody I could actually recommend this to. This now being the same price as the BMW iX3 that I drove, well, that car really does feel like it's a generation newer. And with those, they've now moved on the electric side of things so much, it doesn't really feel like a compromise. That you can get a real world 350 miles out of on the motorway. Around town, they're claiming 500 miles. And it'll charge much, much quicker than this. So for the big long journey, that'd make more sense too. It's only the fact that electricity prices are still absolutely insane here in the UK that would mean I'd recommend something like this to anybody. Add to that the fact that for many people this is going to feel like an old car, even if you were to buy it brand new, and it becomes a very hard sell indeed. But I don't think it'd take an awful lot of work for Volvo to turn this into something I could recommend. And so, I look forward to seeing what they do with it, because with things changing and many companies saying they're no longer going to be aiming for 100% EVs, this is the kind of car I'd like to see stay in the range, only with a much needed proper makeover. So, I want to say a big thank you to Volvo for lending me this car, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.